Hello, my name is Kathleen George. I'm a proud Grand Ronde tribal member and director of the Spirit Mountain Community Fund, the tribe's philanthropic arm. Today, I want to tell you two stories: the story of my tribe and the story of Spirit Mountain Community Fund. Without understanding the first, you will not be able to appreciate the second. By 1954, when the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde were terminated by the federal government, less than 1% of the original 69,100-acre reservation granted by Presidential Executive Order in 1857 remained in tribal ownership. Over the course of almost 100 years, the more than 27 Native American tribes and bands that comprise the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde saw their land slowly whittled away by deception, neglect, and colonial efforts to divest Indian people of their property and rights by state and federal governments. After 21 years of termination, all that remained of the reservation was approximately 5 acres. But it was not always so. Members of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon descend from proud people who populated the vast territory of Western Oregon, southwestern Washington, and Northern California since time immemorial, before contact with European explorers and white settlers occurred in the early 19th century. There are more than 27 original tribes and bands that make up the Grand Ronde Confederation, with the central tribes being the Kalapuya, Umpqua, Molalla, Chinook, Rogue River, Tillamook, Shasta, and Chasta. 7 treaties were signed ceding their vast lands to the federal government in the 1850s. The native peoples were then herded together and temporarily relocated to a reservation at Table Rock near present-day Medford, Oregon. But hostilities with local settlers and miners forced relocation under armed guard to the Coast and Grand Ronde reservations. Tribal members were forced marched 263 miles over 33 days in February and March of 1856 to Grand Ronde. Along the way, 8 tribal members died, and 8 children were born. Despite being relocated to the supposed safety of the Grand Ronde Reservation, the assault on the tribe's way of life continued. In 1887, the Dawes Indian Allotment Act led to the loss of major portions of the reservation to non-Indian ownership. In 1901, U.S. Inspector James McLaughlin declared almost 26,000 acres of the reservation surplus and sold it for $1.10 per acre, reducing the reservation to a mere 440 acres. Much of the land was purchased by local timber interests. But in 1954, Congress passed the Western Oregon Indian Termination Act, severing the trust relationship between the federal government and the tribe, ending all federal services 2 years later. After 29 years of termination and almost a decade of work by numerous tribal members to get the Grand Ronde tribe restored to federal recognition, members Marvin Kimsey, Jackie Whistler, Catherine Harrison, her son Frank Harrison, and her daughter Karen Askins traveled to Washington, D.C. in October 1983 to testify before the House of Representatives about restoring the Grand Ronde tribe. After the House and Senate passed the bill, it was sent to President Ronald Reagan, who, on November 22, 1983, signed it into law and made the Grand Ronde a federally recognized tribe once again. The tribe was restored, and the work of rebuilding a nation began. In 1984, the first official post-restoration tribal council was sworn into office. 4 years later, in 1988, President Reagan signed the Grand Ronde Reservation Act into law, returning almost 10,000 acres of the original reservation to the tribe. In 1994, tribal membership voted to pursue gaming as a revenue source and used land that the tribe had purchased on Highway 18 on which to build Spirit Mountain Casino, which opened in October 1995. With a firm financial base, the tribe began building its membership services and restoring its cultural heritage. And resurrecting the native tradition of potlatch, the tribe created the Spirit Mountain Community Fund. In October 1998, the Governance Center opened and Spirit Mountain Lodge welcomed its first guests. The tribe opened its first elder housing complex in 2000 and opened a new education complex in 2002. In recent years, the tribe has built foster care units to house and support tribal elders, opened housing for both low-income and market-rate rental units for tribal members, and regained sovereignty rights to hunt for ceremonial game. The tribe was instrumental in building the West Valley Veterans Memorial, a tribute to area residents, tribal and non-tribal, who have served in the military. Since its founding in 1997, the fund, which receives 6% of proceeds from Spirit Mountain Casino, has distributed nearly 2,300 grants, totaling more than $69 million, to nonprofit organizations in an 11-county area of Western Oregon. The fund distributes grants to help groups that promote education, healthcare, environmental protection, public safety, culture and the arts, and historic preservation. In other words, groups that make our communities better places to live, work, and play. In addition, the Community Fund provides grants to Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes, which are traditionally underserved by philanthropic organizations. The Grand Ronde Tribe continues to be excited about contributing to these worthwhile efforts to make our communities better, and we will continue to share our good fortune with the communities of Western Oregon and other Oregon tribes. I would now like to briefly tell you a few stories about how the fund has helped improve communities in Western Oregon. For 17 years, the Children's Cancer Association has been bringing joy to children and their families battling serious pediatric illness right here in our neighborhoods.
Organizations like the Children's Cancer Association depend on powerful community partnerships to do more with less, to answer a need, and to respond to children and families and community members when life offers them something that they had no idea would fall into their laps. So CCA is incredibly appreciative of those powerful partnerships that have helped us grow and be a sustainable, transparent organization.
The Straub Environmental Center in Salem creates awareness and understanding of the Mid-Willamette Valley environment. Their programs teach and motivate students to become active stewards of their environment.
The Spirit Mountain Community Fund has been pivotal in providing support, particularly for education for children. And that education includes after-school programs, summer camps, Saturday activities, all with certified educational teachers. Teaching kids about science in the outdoors is far better than teaching in a classroom. It augments what they learn in a classroom in a way that's engaging, transcends cultural, language, and disability barriers. We'd like to make them available to more kids, and more kids from different socioeconomic, cultural backgrounds.
The Spirit Mountain Community Fund also gives grants to governmental entities in Polk and Yamhill counties. One of these was in July of 2015, when Polk County's Family and Community Outreach Department opened the doors to the Central Health and Wellness Center, the first of its kind in the region. The center is a school-based health center, providing care to thousands of local students and families.
Over 60% of parents and families had to leave this community just to access those services. Since we've built this clinic, all of those services are now provided in one spot. We're open to the community, but we're also the first ever school-based health center in Polk County. We wouldn't have been able to do this without the grant funding from Spirit Mountain Community Fund. They were one of many funding partners, but they were one of the most important ones, as their funding allowed us to purchase the electronic medical record system, the computers, the hardware, and the software to operate this clinic.
We try to fill in the gaps between private philanthropy and governmental aid for efforts that help those among us who are the least fortunate. We have had a lot of conversations as trustees on the fund about the need for our funding to actually move from being Band-Aids to being part of the solution for problems that are out there.
I have been to some of the beneficiaries, and one of them was a small program in Depot Bay, and it was for an after-school program. Kids don't have a lot of activities to do in Depot Bay, and so they could stay at school. There might be artwork, there may be a language, it may be learning about the impact of drugs on their lives, but there are several programs offered for these kids after school. And without it, there really is not a lot for them to do.
We do the granting of the money to help them support their project, but all the volunteers and the staff people that work with the various nonprofits that provide service for our community, they're the ones that really do the job for all of us in the community. So it's been that kind of relationship with the community at large, as well as understanding this is the generosity of the tribe that give away the money to help the community at large. We partner with other nonprofits like the Meyer Memorial Trust, the Oregon Community Fund, and so on. We would like to partner with others who are doing great things in our community. So we want to leverage our relationship with those and to continue to support those who are really doing the heavy lifting for our community. So I think this will be ongoing for us.
It's an expectation of our ancestors that we follow through with sharing the wealth. It's something that our ancestors always did. So for the legacy is really to grant round into our people and to our ancestors to help all. That is really what the legacy is. And that we continue to do that, and we will for as long as we can.
Our tribe sees itself as part of the solution in many of our communities. The Grand Ronde Tribe thanks all of our grant recipients for allowing us to partner with them to make Western Oregon a better place to live. Hayumasi.